Welcome to Contributing the Talk. My goal for this talk is to help those of you who want to contribute to the Go programming language open source project get started contributing. I've got some stuff for more veteran contributors near the end too. This is a talk I wish I had seen when I started contributing to the Go project. When I started contributing, I didn't know where to start. I took on a linker bug that I didn't know how to fix, and I got really intimidated by the comments that I got on the changes I sent out. So intimidated that I took a break for more than a year. The second time around, I was better equipped. I took on a more suitable task, to move packages to new locations in the Go source tree. And as I made changes, I eventually figured out some of the rules and conventions in contributing. I realized that it was okay to receive critical comments on my changes. The reviewers weren't out to get me. They just wanted to teach me how to contribute. And I've grown comfortable with some parts of the code base, such as our tools in the regular expressions package. This talk is an attempt to help you get started becoming a contributor. Hopefully, it can save you some time in your path. Slides? Thank you. That was my story. Okay, next slide. Contributing to Go can seem intimidating at times, and it is intimidating. It's important code that's used by a lot of people. Even the core contributors take care to make only the right changes and often have their proposals rejected. The Go project is not an experimental project anymore. It's serious business for a lot of people. But you shouldn't be too intimidated. There are lots of ways to get involved for every level of experience, and I'll show you a couple of options in this talk. We shouldn't forget that as contributors, we're not just working with code, but also with people. It goes without saying that we follow the code of conduct for contributors, but there's more than just following the rules. We should be nice to each other. There's no nonverbal context when communicating on our mailing list, so consider how your words may seem to someone who can't see you. There are a lot of times where you may need to say no to a contributor or a change. If you're already a contributor, and it's your responsibility to say no to a fellow contributor, you should be careful to communicate that it's not personal and you still welcome the contributor in our community. Conversely, when you're getting feedback and constructive criticism from your work from other members of the community, it's easy to read it in a negative subtext. Sometimes I read comments from people who say to change X, and I might still read it as, change X, stupid, but that's not what they said. They just want Go to be the best it can be, just like I do. So don't be scared if you see your commits bleeding with red ink. When you're a beginner, those early rounds of review are part of the learning process. As you anticipate our patterns, edits to later CLs become lighter. And the whole time, our code is getting better too. With all this said, it's good to keep in mind that everyone involved in Go is very, very busy. And since we're human, we sometimes don't take enough time to communicate carefully. When that happens, give your reviewer the benefit of the doubt. If you're upset by it, reach out to them off list to clear the air. On a personal note, I found the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie to be really useful for this sort of communication thing. It's full of a lot of common sense that's really easy to forget sometimes. All right. The rest of the talk is structured as follows. First, I'll go over the components in the Go project and the tools and resources you'll be using as a contributor. Then I'll talk about some ways you can contribute as a beginner, and I'll give a demo of making a contribution. Finally, I'll talk about ways you can help out as a more advanced contributor. Let's take a look at the components of the Go project. The core repository contains the compiler and runtime, standard library, and docs for Go. It's what you get when you install the Go installation. The subrepos contain packages and other tools that have been developed as part of the Go project. For instance, tools contains tools such as Guru and Go imports, and mobile contains support for developing Go apps that run on iOS and Android. These packages have import paths that start with golang.org/x/ the subrepo name. Okay, That's a Go project. Let's take a look at the tools that you have. The first resource you should start with is golang.org. It has a number of resources for contributors. Of particular interest to contributors, we have the project page, which links to a number of resources about the project, especially the contribution guidelines. That's what the arrow is pointing to. The contribution guidelines contain a lot of the contribution instructions in this talk. You should definitely take a look at it if you're interested in contributing. Don't worry about everything up here. I will go over all of this later in the talk. We use GitHub primarily for its issue tracker and its wiki. This is what the Go GitHub page looks like. But we don't use GitHub for contributing to the language. We use a much better tool called Garrett, which I will show you later in the talk. GitHub is just a mirror of the actual Go repositories that are stored at go.googlesource.com. This is what go.googlesource.com looks like. Both the Go core repository and all the subrepos, which are everything except for Go up there, are hosted here. You can browse the Git log and branches and download the code here too. Again, the subrepos have import paths that start with golang.org/x. They're stored on Google Source, and we've used a special feature or a regular feature in GoGet to map from those golang.org/x import paths to go.googlesource.com. Okay, this is Garrett. This is a tool we use to do code reviews, which is a process of peer review for contributions people want to make to the Go project. We will go over the code review process later in this talk. For now, let's take a look at what Garrett looks like. If we click on one of the lines on this page, we get the page for that entry. Garrett and other code review tools allow us to review code by posting comments and assigning scores. We can do both by clicking on the reply button. By the way, this is what the comments look like on the Garrett page. When we click the reply button, we have an option to say something, add scores, and then send those comments or scores. You will probably not see the -2 and +2 or run trybot fields when you're a beginner contributor. A 0 score is a neutral score. A -2 blocks a change from being committed. It means that the reviewer thinks there's a major problem that needs to be addressed in the change. We don't really use -1s that much, but here's what it looks like. A +1 expresses approval to a change, but someone else must approve it with a +2 before it can get submitted to the Go repository. Again, we'll talk more about code review later in the talk. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of a contribution that someone has recently made to Go. This is a new sub-test feature that's coming in Go 1.7. Before, each named test case or benchmark would have to be written in its own function. So in this example, which these are benchmarks from the regular expressions package, before, we'd have to have a benchmark function for each combination of regular expression and input string length. That's the new subtest allows us to write everything in one function. The b.run functions create subtests within the original benchmark. So we can just have one function that runs the benchmarks that we want. It's pretty nifty. So the first step for adding this feature is to file a proposal. So this particular feature was contributed by Marcel, one of our contributors, who has the GitHub handle mpvl. So let's take a look at the steps Marcel went through to add the feature. So first, you file a proposal on issue on GitHub. The issue contains a description of a feature and a rationale for the change. By the way, that link at the bottom is a convenience shortcut that links to the GitHub issue. Now, since this is a pretty major feature, we also put together a proposal document. Proposal documents are sent as markdown files and are checked into the proposal repo, SubRepo. This is what the checked-in proposal looks like as rendered by GitHub. Sections introducing the problem being solved with the change, description of the change being proposed and how it solves the problem, an examination of alternatives, and an implementation strategy. The discussion continues on the GitHub issue. Eventually, consensus is reached on the issue, and Marcel can start writing code for the implementation. So this is changes that were done to add this feature. Notice too that approve the change to be submitted. And so this is a Garrett page, and the golang.org/CL link is a shortcut that links to the Garrett page for the code review. Again, more on code review later. Here's an example of a part of the code review. Marcel sent out code. Russ writes a comment on that code. Marcel responds. It's on the right side of the screen. Comments that Russ made. All right. So then the change is merged, and when 1.7 is released, we can all write subtests and sub-benchmarks. Now, if you're a beginner contributing to the Go project, we recommend starting by filing bugs, updating docs, or adding test cases. You probably won't go hunting for bugs when you're a beginner, because bugs often show up when you least expect it. But if you do encounter a bug, we'd love a report. And there's no harm in filing duplicates. So even if it seems like we must already have seen a bug, you can send the report anyway. To file a bug, go to golang.org/issue/new, which is another shortcut that goes to GitHub's issue tracker page. And it'll pop up a form with prompts for details about your issue. This page shows what that form looks like. If you see a bug already in the tracker, but don't know how to fix it, you can still help. Investigating and clarifying bugs is extremely helpful. Creating a test case or reproduction for a bug, or minimizing a complex one, is extremely helpful in getting it fixed. No nit is too small when it comes to our docs. If there's anything that's not clear, either in go.comments or the documentation on golang.org, just make a change to the Go Git repository and send it to us. Documentation on golang.org is contained in the Go repository in the doc directory. You can see golang.org/docs on the left-hand side, and ls, the doc directory in the terminal window there. On the right-hand side, you can see our wiki. It's on GitHub, and it's open to edit by any GitHub member. Go to golang.org/wiki and click the edit button to make changes there. Another great way for a beginner to get involved is by contributing test cases. I will demo contributing a benchmark, which is kind of like a test case, next. Okay, so to provide some motivation for this change, I've recently been working on performance improvement for the regular expressions package. It's a port of the fast but complicated RE2 regular expression DFA matcher to Go. But there were two problems. First, I didn't have my work done in time for the freeze, which I will talk about later. And second, I didn't have enough of a justification that the complexity was worth it. One way of making that justification is for me to demonstrate an improvement on the benchmarks. But the benchmarks that are currently checked in are pretty easy for the current NFA matcher. So I will try to check in something a bit harder. Like this one. This to regular expressions implementation. And the comment says that NFA execution will be particularly slow. So it's just what I'm looking for. Don't worry too much about the C++ code on the page. The important thing is just that regular expression, which I can just paste into the Go benchmark file. All right, demo time. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start by showing you my environment. So I've got my editor set and my Go path set to home, which are personal preferences. I've also got this Go root bootstrap set. You only need it if you're making changes to the Go toolchain or the standard library. And since the compiler is written in Go, we need a previously existing version of Go to compile it. So Go root bootstrap points to that. It's pointing to the Go installation I have in user local Go. I'm also adding go path /bin to my path so I could run the tools that I go get. And I'm setting my prompt to show the full directory that I'm in to make it easier to follow this demo. All right, let's get the Go source code. I'm going to git clone go.googlesource.com/go. So this is going to download Go core repository. Okay. Oh no, I'm missing a slide. Okay, so we have 3 tools that we can run once we download the Go repository. So they are make.bash, all.bash, and test.bash. And they're checked into the source directory in the Go repository. Make.bash will build the Go tool and the compiler. Test.bash will run tests, and all.bash will build and test everything. So all.bash takes too long to run for this demo, but I will run make.bash in the Go source directory to build everything. All right. Now let's go get those tools that I was talking about. So I'm going to go get -u. Again, this is all on the contribution guidelines page, so you don't need to write it down. Go get /u, golang.org/x/review /get code review. All right. I'm going to add some configuration to my git config in my home directory so I can use these tools more effectively. All right. So you need to have a Google account when you're contributing. So I've set this username and email to my name, and can coordinate Git and our tools like Garrett and Google Source. Okay, here I'm for the code review tools. So I can type change, which is a shortcut for Git code review change. This last bit is added by a cookie generation script that we will that I'll show you how to. On our build completed, I'm just going to an alias to that new version of Go that I've run. All right, so we see that this. Okay. Now let's make our change. So I'm just running a tool to copy the actual change to my clipboard for demo purposes. So the actual file that we're changing is in regular expressions exec_test.go. So near the bottom, we have our benchmarks. So I'm going to paste the benchmark. It was called fanout in C++, so I'll just call it fanout here. And I will paste that regular expression. So it looks like this. And that is the change that we made. That adds a new benchmark. Cool, great, change is done. And now let's run the benchmarks to make sure that everything works. So normally you test regular expressions by typing go test regex. But that's going to use instead, I need to use the Go tool that I've just built, which has built in it the path to the source code that it was built from, basically the Go root. So I will do dev go test regex, short version, right? Test pass, and now I'm going to run the benchmarks. Not going to run any tests. This is using the new subtest syntax that's going to come out in 1.7. Oh, thank you. I made that mistake when I was practicing too. Huh. Okay, yes. So these are the fan-out benchmarks. So these are actually really, which was kind of what we intended, but it's going to take long for it to run, so I'm just going to quit. So, but trust me that it works. I've made my change. I've tested it. You should probably run all.bash here just to make sure that everything works, but I'm not going to do that because it takes too long. And our change, so it's time to mail it. We need to write a change description. Change descriptions to communicate both to the reviewer of your change and the future contributors. So the reviewer wants to know what your change is doing and what they should look for when they're reviewing your change. And a future contributor might want to see why that change was added when they're debugging something. So we should make our changes very clear. And we could find a lot of great examples of change descriptions by just running through git log on the Go repo. We've got contributors that write some really fantastic. Look at the anatomy of a change description. So this is just some change. At go.googlesource.com. This is what the go.googlesource.com change view looks like. So the first line is the most important part of the change description. It becomes the really trying to scan through changes quickly in your git log, you're only going to be looking at that first line. So in Go, we use this very specific format for that first line. First, you have the path, which is the directory that you're changing. We are changing the runtime directory under source in the core repo, so I'm putting runtime there. If you're changing one of the subrepos, you would say x repo name / and then the directory as usual. And then you have a summary. So the summary should be what you would complete a sentence with when added change. And this fixed nanotime for macOS. Try to come up with a really good change description for this. But don't worry too much. We'll help you fix it if it's not awesome. All right. So then after that, we have a description of what the change does. And if there's a GitHub issue for the change, and there should be for most non-trivial changes. So we've got some magic set up. Our friend GopherBot. When GopherBot sees that a change that says that it fixes an issue has been submitted, it will close the issue for you. And it also links to that issue when it's created. I mean, links to the change when the change is created, and it links to an issue. All right. So as an example of what not to do, I sent out a change, and I set the subject to XXX, right? I change it before I send it out. That became the subject line for the email. Even after I changed the change description, you can see on the top right, it says regex move input to its own whatever, because I changed it. But people were still getting emails that said IXXX, and the mail subject was awful, so I had to throw that out and send out the change again. Oh, and this is how you do it. Russ conveniently provides those instructions. But moral of the story, change descriptions, really important. Make sure you get it right before you send out your change. All right, back to the demo. So, special shell command to my clipboard. So now I've made the change. I'm on my master branch. So what I want to do is I'm going to put my change on a new branch. So the way things work is the way our tools work, the ones that we downloaded, you create a new branch that has one commit in it. And that commit is the change that you're going to make. And when it's merged, it'll show up on top of the Go Git repo. So I'm going to use git change. And I'll call my change fan out, which will conveniently create that new branch that I can switch to right now. And I'm going to add that file. If I run git change again, it'll let me edit the commit message. And I'll add that file. It's going to amend the change. And this is my commit message. So I'm adding the fan-out benchmark. I'm talking about how it came from RE2 and what it's doing. No issue, because this is like a pretty minor change. I'm just adding a simple benchmark. All right, I'm going to save this. And so the change has been updated. And before I send it out, let me just do one last check with git show to see what I have. Commit message. I'm adding this one line. Everything looks good. So I will mail it out. And the command to do that is conveniently git mail. So this probably will not work for you when you try to do it. And that is because you need to have a special cookie to communicate to our tools what your identity is. So what you want to do is go to go.googlesource.com. That's that page on the left-hand side. You click Generate Password, and it'll pop up this page on the right with a little shell script you can just paste into your prompt. So like I didn't do that because there's like a little cookie in there, and you'd be able to send changes out as me if I left it up on the screen. But you should just paste that into your prompt, and it will install the cookie for you and add that line at the end of your git config that I showed you earlier. Another thing you need to do is to add a CLA. So a CLA gives the Go project a license to redistribute your code. So git mail will tell you if you haven't signed it yet. To sign it, go to cla.developers.google.com, click on Manage Agreements. It'll ask you to log in. I skipped that page. And then you can click on one of these two options, and it'll give you a form that you can fill out with information to sign your CLA. It's pretty simple. All right, so I already did all that. And that will make a new change on Garrett with this nice link. And we will open a Chrome window. Oh, can you guys see all this? And so here's my change. Okay, I got an r equals go 1.8 on this. So r equals go 1.8 tells the tools to ignore our changes before, so that we can wait until go 1.8 comes out because of the freeze, which I'll talk about later. I actually have a nice slide on that. So, which I will get to later. Anyone want to approve my change? That would be really great. Ping, please approve. This is really small. Okay, see, here's the thing. I can +2 my own change, but if I do, I will get my +2 privileges taken away from me forever. So I'm not going to do that. Okay. I got a +1. Now here's the thing. +1 is great. It means that people like my change, but it's not going to let me submit my change because it means that they think someone else should have. Did it submit the change? Oh, okay. We're +2 sniped. Okay, we got a +2. The change got submitted. Yay! Oh, and if we go to go.googlesource.com, the change is here. All right. Hooray! We've made a change to Go. Oh, and see, here's why that first line is so important. That's all we see over here. So we want to see the last few changes that were made. We only get that first line. All right. Okay. So if you're contributing, you might find that no one responds to your changes. If it happens, your best bet is to send a friendly ping on the change. The same goes for issue requests. Happens that changes fall through the cracks. We aren't deliberately ignoring you, so just ping the change to surface it. On the other hand, because people are busy, you might need to wait a day or two before getting a response on your change or comments. I didn't have a day or two in this demo. It's best to give your reviewers some time to respond before pinging. All right. Let's talk about more advanced things for more advanced contributors. Any work that's more complicated than what we've already mentioned generally requires a bug tracker issue that's been accepted, or in even more involved cases, a proposal. So as you saw in the demo earlier, even a benchmark change can be controversial to get in during the freeze. So we'll accept bug reports, doc changes, and small tests and benchmarks year-round, but you should be mindful of the Go release cycle if you're contributing code or doing anything more complex, especially on the Go repository. Each Go release cycle is about 6 months long. The Go tree is open for development for the first 3 months of the cycle and enters the freeze for the second 3 months. During the freeze, we'll generally only make changes to fix major bugs or regressions introduced during the development phase. We're currently in the freeze for the 1.7 release cycle. When 1.7 is released in August, the tree will thaw and the 1.8 development phase will begin. The tree will then be open for general contributions for 3 months, after which the 1.8 freeze will begin. If you're itching to make a change, you can still send it out and add the comment, r equals go 1.8. But then it won't be looked at until the thaw. So here's another Go 1.8 example. I didn't finish my regular expressions work in time, So we added a comment saying r equals go 1.8 to indicate to our tools and contributors that this change should be ignored until the thaw. If you see an open issue with no assignee, you should feel free to take it on. Comment on the issue to let people know that you're working on it so we can avoid having people do the same work twice. Then send in your change as before. It's okay if you volunteer to fix an issue, but find that you don't have the time. But if that happens, remember to comment on the issue, letting people know that the change is open for a new assignee. The issue is open for a new assignee. Once you have a fix, send it to us. Most changes should include tests, especially if you're fixing a bug. By the way, this is a good time for me to say I'm leaving some time at the end for questions. So if you want to ask a question, just line up behind one of those mics. All right. So if you want to make a new change, introducing new behavior features to the runtime or compiler, standard library tools or subrepos, start by filing an issue. The project contributors will review the issue and make a decision to accept the proposal, reject it, or ask for a proposal document. Discussion will continue on the issue tracker until a decision is made. The language is more or less frozen, and language changes must be small, focused, and address a significant need in the ecosystem. In contrast, much of the new work that's being done is more behind the scenes. For example, optimizations and bug fixes in the standard library, GC improvements in the runtime, refactoring and the SSA backend in the compiler, and vendoring support in the tools. There's also a lot of work being done in the subrepos. And now, some tips for reviewers. One of the most helpful ways to contribute to the Go project is by reviewing changes. You can actually start reviewing changes even before you become a committer. And even if you're not familiar with the code base, there are a few things most contributors can help point out in reviews. Don't be afraid to say, I don't understand a function. It might cause the author to provide a good explanation in the comment, or better still, to simplify the code. We love simple code. You can suggest improvements to change descriptions. Remember that change descriptions have a particular format. You can suggest code style improvements. Link to the Go review comment stock at golang.org/s/style or effective Go. All non-trivial changes should link back to the GitHub issue they're addressing. Proposals should be approved before work starts on them. It's okay to be picky. Just acknowledge that you are when you are. Sometimes people feel like they're being blocked when you're really just addressing a small quibble that is ultimately not a big deal. And don't forget, anyone can make review comments on changes. You don't need to be a committer to help out with reviews. Our contributors come from many different backgrounds and have different motivations for contributing to the project. So everyone's path as a contributor is going to be different. But let's take a step back and look at an example of progression of involvement on the project. If there's a particular part of the project that you're interested in, start by reading the code. If you're confused, that might be an opportunity. It might mean that we are missing test cases or documentation. Look for bugs in the GitHub issue tracker that are relevant to that part and try to fix them. Once you fix the number of issues and start becoming more familiar with the code base, you might get some ideas for changes you want to make and things you want to fix, so you might start filing suggestions in the issue tracker or by filing proposals. And you might start watching for changes done in the directory and adding review comments. Eventually, we'll get tired of submitting your changes for you and we'll make you a committer. So one thing that I forgot to mention is that you usually can't submit your changes in the beginning. So I thought I was going to reject my submit. But usually when you're a beginner, you'll have to ask someone who's already a committer in the project to submit your change for you, usually your reviewer. But eventually we'll get sick of that, and we'll grant you the ability to submit your own changes. And you'll also be able to grant +2s to other changes, approving them to be submitted, and to submit changes for new contributors. At that point, you might become an actor reviewer in your part of the code base. Remember, this is true for every contributor, but especially for advanced contributors. You're representing the Go community. Remember to be nice. And of course, Thank you. Thank you to all our contributors for contributing. You all make our project great. Thank you to all our reviewers for the time you spent reviewing. The work you do in improving our code quality and teaching our contributors is invaluable. And thank you all for coming to this talk and your interest in contributing. You are the future of Go.